You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Good afternoon. Dito tayo sa Marikina City, sa Barangay Santo Niño. I am walking on Agricultores Street. I'm heading towards Tatay Oli Shoes. Isa sa mga iconic na shoemakers dito sa Marikina. The local shoe industry in the Philippines has been falling behind for quite some time after it struggled to compete with the arrival of imported mass-produced footwear. When the pandemic came 2 years ago, many shoe business owners had to close shop since footwear wasn't considered an essential business. I'm Franco Luna, Puma Podcast. You're listening to Teka Teka News. In this episode, kumustahin natin ang mga sapatero natin sa Marikina. On the way here, I passed by, I think 4 or 5 shoe supply shops. Passing by one right now. They're selling everything from leather to rubber to soles, no? You can really tell it's a city that loves its shoes. There's an entire road here called Shoe Ave. Also saw a bunch of shoe stores along that road. Sige, ayan, dito na ako sa bahay ni Tatay Oli. Pasok tayo.
Ako si Rolando Santos. Kung tawagin ako rito sa Marikina ay si Tatay Oli. Ako po ay nagpundar ng tungkol sa sapatos na buong Marikina ang aking hangarin. Hindi po pansarili ko. Ang aking ginawa po na humarap ako sa presidente para lang po sa takbo ng Marikina. Dahil lang alam ko ang Marikina ay palubog na.
Several years ago, Tatay Oli was referred to as the presidential shoemaker after he formed a close relationship with former President Rodrigo Duterte. Tatay Oli fondly recalls how he helped revitalize the Marikina footwear industry by crafting a pair specifically to give to the president as a gift.
Ngayon, nung naglalakad naman siya para bisitahin ang mga sundalo, bakit laki-laki na yung sapatos niya? Kumbaga parang yung dulo, ang haba. Sabi ko, hindi siguro maybe ang panto. Kaya maraming nagsabi sa akin na paano ko nahulaan ang paan ni Duterte.
Oo nga po, paano niyo nahulaan?
Yun nga, pinapanood ko lang.
Ano po yung size?
9.
Na-observe niyo lang po talaga sa television?
Pero sinusuot niya, 10, 11.
Then President Duterte went on to order 15 more pairs that he wore throughout his term. That was almost a decade ago. And 73-year-old Tatay Oli says business just hasn't been the same since then. It was in 1956 when Marikina emerged as a town of shoemakers after World War II. At its peak in the 70s, Marikina's unique brand of leather shoes was coveted by even the most discriminating customers in fashion cities around the globe. And today, the shoe capital of the Philippines produces a 1/7 of all the shoes made in the country. But in the pandemic, it began to decline. From a gross value added of 8 billion pesos in 2000, it grew to 16 billion pesos before the pandemic hit. That figure went down to 11 billion in 2021.
Sa tingin ko ngayon, parang yung sapatos ng Marikina ngayon, parang andap-andap Kumbaga, ibig sabihin may time na malakas, may time na mahina. Hindi ka mukha nung una talaga nung mga talagang fast-moving talaga. Halos lahat ng mga tindahan ng sapatos, yun.
Yan si Jopel Pastor Fide, ang may-ari ng isang shoe supply store along Agricultores Street. Like most of Marikina's food and cycling scenes, most of these stores are small, family-owned businesses operating out of garages. It's a tight-knit community built around the love for shoes. With the recent closure of the Marikina Shoe Gallery in Riverbanks, the only space that's left for them is Marikina's shoe bazaars. But those are only held every April and December by the local government. For the rest of the year, business is hard to come by for the craftsmen who do this for a living. Part of that is because their usual customers are now flocking to factory-made shoes, which are usually cheaper.
Noon talagang wala na.
Wala na talaga.
Kaya nga nag-iiba na sila ng trabaho eh. Yung imbis na sapatero, ginagawa nila, nangangalakal na lang, nagbubuti na lang. Hindi naman pwedeng gawin ng sapat kung tunay kang sapatero. At ikaw ay manggagawa ng sapatos. Mangangalakal ka. Hindi naman siguro pwede. Kaya lang talagang wala nang makain. Doon ko naramdaman na ang Marikina ay lulubog nan talaga.
There's just one problem. The local masters of shoemaking are struggling to find business in a post-pandemic world.
Parang natalo rin yung ibang mga gawang kasi marami na rin gumagawa ng mga homemade. Yung ibig sabihin yung MTO, made to order. Yung ganun, parang ganun. Hindi na kamukha talaga yun. Pag sinabi mong gawaan talaga, maramihang gawa. Pag sinabing MTO, yung pang sarili lang, pang sariling gamit lang. Sa akin, wala kaming sa social media. Talagang dito lang talaga.
Dito lang po talaga. Kumusta naman po ang negosyo nyo dito?
Sa ngayon, mahina.
Mahina po.
Oo.
For the most part, old traditions did not change. And for them, that was both a blessing and a curse.
Panay makina eh. Ultimo cutter dati. Yung cutter, yung manunukat. Mano-mano eh. Naging makina na lahat. Pati yung pagmumolde, makina na rin. Pati yung pagsusweras, makina na rin. Dati na ginagawa lang namin ng pangamayan. Ngayon lang nagbabalik sa amin yung gawang pero danas na namin na matibay ang gawang kamay kaysa sa mga gawang makina. Nadanas namin.
During the community quarantines, Marikina shoemaking was kept afloat by a slew of regular faithful customers whose shoes were made to order. Some of them even made the trips to visit Tatay Oli at his home even mid-pandemic. The problem was they were also mostly within his age group. Materials were never a problem since they were supplied by other local businesses.
Siyempre, kasi ikaw gumawa, iibahin mo na kwenta mo. Wala namang problema kung tumaas ang materialis eh. Ang problema, yung wala na kaming magawa. Yun ang itinigil, pinasukan kami ng mga makina. Ng mga imported na hindi naman tumatagal.
But that soon became a handful of close customers. Most of his other clientele preferred factory-made shoes at that point. And because the demand shifted, workers had to adjust. It didn't help that this all happened during the pandemic. Before 2019, they used to rake in 100,000 pesos on bazaars alone. Today, 7,000 pesos is what a good day looks like.
Nitong bumaba na lang nang mawalan na ng trabaho. Isipin mo, meron din kaming 2 taon nagtiis na wala kaming income. Kumikita kami, pero hindi sapat. Dahil pinasok ko kami ang mga makina. Ang gusto nila, ang mga manggagawa, mga naglalapat, hindi na gawang kamay. Gawang makina na lang.
And because of that, he watched as the industry's own workers left in droves.
Naramdaman ko na talagang ang sapatos ay talagang titigil. Dahil walang nagpo-promote eh. Kahit yung manggagawa ko eh, ang sinasabi, walang nagpo-promote ng tungkol sa sapatos. Kaya kami, sila, hindi nagbabago ang takbo ng minsan, isang linggong wala, isang linggong meron. Po pwede ba yun? Ikaw kumakain araw-araw.
It's a classic story of starving artists moving on to greener pastures. As Marikina's shoemakers gave way to machines, the distinctly Filipino brand of leatherworking was lost little by little, and with it, a part of our culture.
Ang handmade kasi, nakikita mo ang talagang natural na gamit ng isang sapatos. Pero pagka sa makina, umubra na lang yun. Kung halimbawa, hindi mo alam na mahinang klase, gagamitin mo pag umuubra naman sa makina sa gawang kamay, hindi naman umuubra yung sa gawang kamay dahil nga pambatak ng bakal. Alam namin na yan na marupok, matibay.
We're pausing for a quick break now. When we return, we'll tell you about how shoemakers in Marikina moved forward in the pandemic and the age of social media.
We realized po na since e-commerce right now is actually a booming business already, naisip namin na mag-transition na rin to e-commerce. And then before po kasi ang kinikater po namin, mga clients na malalapit lang, na gusto mag-walk-in.
That's Melvin Pasiona. He's a registered nurse by profession, but he's the founder and CEO of Alta Philippines, an online footwear store. He says he got the love of shoes from his grandparents, who were also Marikina shoemakers.
I said to myself, try ko lang naman since andyan naman yung opportunity and I also love shoes, so tinry ko lang. So during that time, siguro mga iilan-ilan pa lang po yung brands na in the market. However, ngayon, 4 years after, we are already saturated. So I think the competition is really tough.
Melvin says much younger and more digital-savvy shoemakers have a completely different experience of the industry. He disagrees with that popular notion. The industry isn't dying at all. He says the demand is actually still there. You just don't see it in person these days.
Because of e-commerce, dun ko na na-realize na the demand of leather shoes is so big, and because di ba po they say na the industry in Marikina is already declining, but in fact hindi po.
Melvin's store started in 2019 as a one-man operation working with just a handful of shoemakers. Back then, he took charge of answering questions, packing, you name it. It wasn't until the pandemic hit that they decided to take the plunge.
Di ba po, we all know that international manufacturers already penetrated the country. So that's when nagkaroon ng challenge yung mga local shoemakers natin na makipag-compete with international shoemakers. So because of that po, nagkaroon ng konting decline sa, let's say, mga suppliers, nagkaroon ng competitions. So noong 2020, may mga losses na kami, yung mga stocks po namin hindi na gumagalaw. So nung time po kasi na yun, wala pa pong pandemic, lahat ng tao nawalan ng trabaho.
In late 2020, the Marikina city government said around an eighth of all shoemakers in the city had to stop operations. Just 20% were able to keep going, and those were the ones who were able to migrate online. But Melvin said he quickly learned that it's possible to thrive without a physical space.
To tell you honestly, we are not participating with bazaars, di ba, mga ganyan, mga forum, kasi I always believe in the power of social media. So us millennials, tayo sir, we are very familiar with the fast-changing technology right now, just like social media. So ako po, my bread and butter is really e-commerce.
There's another problem for the industry. The old guard is dying out, and they're struggling to navigate the digital age. Tatay Ollie is one of the few left who can do the entire process with his bare hands, from the heel to the toe box and everything in between. He even designs his own prints and patterns, something other shoemakers leave to designers.
Pero sa aking kalagayan, dahil sa aking medyo nakita nila, medyo may edad na ako. Pero andito pa rin ako, sapatos pa rin. Kaya nga, ang bilin ko sa kanila, huwag nilang iiwan ang sapatos. At ito ang tatak ng Marikina, sapatos. Ngayon, kung kayo'y magbabago ng isipan na yung mga bata ay gagawin ninyong hindi sapatero at mag-aaral, eh paano naman tayo? Tayong marurunong sa sapatos. Hindi na, mawawala na ng ano yan, ng saysay, ang gawa ng sapatos sa Marikina.
But breaking into the digital space is a challenge for Tatay Oli, who has never owned a smartphone. There's also stiff competition online where it's all a game of strategy and marketing. Two things most other shoemakers don't have the luxury of learning.
Kasi ang presyo nila mas mababa dun sa aming ginagawa. Kaya kami dumaon na. Dahil ang binibili nila mga gawang makina. Hindi naman kami ang pwedeng pumasok doon. Dahil ang mga di makina na. Kailangan ni aral na. Mga manggagawa kasi dito sa Marikina, tiyak na lalaman niya na wala talagang mga tinapos na pag-aaral. Ang tinapos lang namin talaga sapatos. Ganyan lang kami.
But Melvin says a time is soon coming that the entire industry will have to go online to survive. It's going to be challenging, but it's necessary.
I think they really have to transition into e-commerce or what we say as online business because ito na po kasi talaga yung sinasabi ko nga po lagi, it's not the icing on the cake, it's the cake itself. Pagalingan na lang po siguro sa marketing and also because I always believe marketing is the key in any business. So for you to stand out in a completely saturated market, I think you have to really be aggressive in terms of your marketing.
Even now, Tatay Oli's wife and kids are the ones handling his social media pages, where they're only just getting by. He admits he never learned to use a cell phone because he's stuck with his first love all his life, making shoes. And he says he's just happy to still be doing what he loves. Melvin admits there's also still tough competition with factory-made shoes.
Competition between local and international shoemakers. So because of that, nagkaroon ng konting challenge but because meron pa po tayong mga dedicated na mga veteran shoemakers right now in Marikina who are making shoes for decades already and talagang yung workmanship po talaga nila ay kaya pang lumaban sa mga international shoemakers or international manufacturers. Talagang makikita mong world-class quality pa rin po talaga ang gawa namin.
But he says there's no beating the quality of Filipino-made shoes. It's all just a matter of branding.
Luxury items po talaga are handcrafted. Let's say yung mga luxury bags, they are also handcrafted because when you say po handcrafted or handmade ang isang bagay, mas tumataas po ang workmanship niyan and mas dapat tumaas ang value niyan. Kasi that's a product of love, hard work, and passion. Hindi po makina ang bumuo dyan, kundi dedikasyon ng isang veteranong shoemaker, local shoemaker.
As for Tatay Oli, he says he's passed that love on to his children. But he hopes more young people take an interest in the craft too before the Filipino craft eventually dies out.
Ngayon, marami nung mihiling sa akin yan na yung kasing tanda ko. Kaso, wala na, siguro makikita mo naman na ako na lang siguro ang gumagawa ng sapatos. No? Kung matututuroan ko lahat ng manggagawa dito, pwedeng nilang pag malaki kung sakaling matuto.
Ng mga sapatero.
Oo, yun ang aking gusto. Mabuhay talaga ang sapatos. Dahil yan lang ang pag-asa namin. Dahil kinanununuan ko pa sapatos na.
Melvin says it's a matter of both generations working together to preserve the art.
We also have shoemakers that are as young as 20, 30s that are already performing very well in terms of shoemaking. So I think yung craftsmanship is something can be learned, sir. Ituturo mo lang siya sa mga younger generation. To tell you honestly, sir, madami pong nag-close talaga ng pandemic ng mga shoe manufacturers in Marikina. But right now, unti-unti na po silang bumabalik, including us. So right now, unti-unti na po ulit nag-expand yung business. And I think 5 years or 3 years from now, I think we can go back to normal. If we will just push for locally made products, if we will always love local, I think there will still be a big future for us shoemakers in Marikina in the Philippines, sir.
The old masters found it hard to adjust, but Tatay Oli says one thing's for sure. The old ways still trump the new wave when it comes to Marikina's leather shoes. Here he is again with the final word.
Lahat ng aking manggagawa dito sa Marikina, yun lang ang pakiusap ko. Mahalin nila ang sapatero. Basta sila gumawa ng sapato. Huwag silang tumigil. Yun ang nanatili nga sa isip ko eh. Bakit mo pananatiliin yung makina? Ito ang kamay ko. Kaya nga ang pangako ko sa kanila, hindi mananalo yung makinang yan sa aking kamay. Sapagkat yung gawang kamay, nakikita ko ang diferensya kung saan mahina. Ay samantalang yung makina, kung bibilutin lang yan, hindi naman nila alam kung may yan matibay o hindi.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Franco Luna. This episode was edited by Pidoy Blanco. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or two. And of course, don't forget to follow Teka Teka News and Puma Podcast on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. Thanks for listening.